Hey, welcome everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first 𝗠𝗶H Tech Talk, an evening where we're going to be discussing everything mining technologies under 𝗠𝗶H. It's lovely to have everyone here. I am 𝗞𝗍𝗄𝗂. I am technical lead at 𝗠𝗶₻, and I'll be hosting tonight. So on the agenda this evening, we've got three speakers. We're going to start off with Gerald Stenzel, who is a general manager of opencast technology at Glencore, followed by Karabo Motapo, who is she's a digital transformation manager. And lastly, we'll have 𝗧𝗲𝗰𝗵 𝗧𝗹𝗸, who is a Group Head Innovation and New Technology Manager at 𝗪𝗓𝗄𝗄. Welcome everyone. I see we still have some people joining, so we'll just continue and people can join in as we go along. With me hosting tonight, I've got Dr. Avela, who will be assisting me tonight. So please feel free to put some questions in the chat as we go along. We will be allowing a Q&A following each and every speaker, and we'll take about 3 questions after each speaker and then move on to the next speaker. We will then allow questions and answers at the end of the session for any additional questions. So you can post questions in the chat room, and you can just raise your hand following the speakers so that we can also take your questions then. We're going to kick off the evening with Gerald Stenzel. I'm going to read his bio, a short bio. So Gerald Stenzel has been in the mining industry, coal mining industry, for approximately 35 years. He's currently the general manager of opencast technologies at Glencore. He's a Wits mining engineering graduate and also obtained a BCom degree at University of South Africa. His role includes consulting on all aspects of opencast mining operations and introducing new technologies that will improve the safety, health, and environment, and also increase productivity output. His hobbies include golfing and fishing, and he is a die-hard Lions and Pirates fan. I'm going to welcome Gerald Stenzel. He'll be sharing with us technologies on hot hole blasting in the coal mining industry. Welcome, Gerald Stenzel.
Hi, good day. Thanks everyone. I'm going to share the screen and realize we're on a bit of a time crunch, so this is going to be the speedy version of this presentation. Let it just open. All right, it should be showing. So tonight, ladies and gents, I'm going to take you through hot hole blasting. We've just increased our maximum blasting temperature to 120. And I'll take you through just a brief history of how we got to this and what we're using, the technology we're using to make this possible and to do it safely. So first of all, just a quick short history of hot hole blasting. The maximum temperature for charging hot holes at Xstrata and later Glencore, going back all the way to 2013, was 80 degrees Celsius. So we never charged holes hotter than that. And we used a product called SH235, which was an eco blend for hot holes and a reactive ground. However, in 2019, we had the first hot hole detonations. One on the 25th of February, where emulsion fell into the underground and started to vent and then exploded. And then we had a second one on the 4th of September. The maximum hole temperatures here was 72 degrees, so we didn't exceed our temperatures. But then on the 10th of November 2019, we had a fatal accident. After charging a hole which only measured 21 degrees with a damaged thermocouple probe, and we didn't identify that there was hot coal near the top of the hole. It was in a big pillar. We had a detonation and one person, Simon Sandamela, was fatally injured. In 2020, we changed to AEL bulk explosives and new power gel for hot and reactive grounds. We had 6 hot hole detonations. All of them were at below 80 degrees. And I'll take you quickly through these, how this, all went down. We only in 2021, we started to see the light. We introduced infrared temperature measurements and then PVC sleeves. And we started to see that the incidents went away. We had no hot hole detonations, no incidents. In 2022, we've conducted explosive testing. I'll take you very quickly through some of those and show you how we've now reached a temperature of 120 degrees when using the PVC sleeves. And, we've had no incidents. We've done over 20,000 holes by now. So this is the product that we changed to, which is X², which means it's for hot and reactive ground. But soon after charging, it started to bubble like this. And you can...
So, bubbling, just bubble them. There it goes. There.
And you can see how excited I got. Standing right over a bubbling hole with explosives. But the cup sample is the one picture on the left. That's what, it's a 35% blended product. And what came out of the hole after the reaction is this gray mess. And AECI told us all sorts of things about the reasons that they thought it was. It could have been methane gas, and it was all sorts of stories. But we had a couple more of these incidents, and we couldn't understand why, because the product's actually made at above 80 degrees Celsius. We also then, when charging in 2020, we had this incident. This is one of the 6 incidents that we had. So charging a hole here at 72 degrees, and just to make 100% sure, we sleeved the hole with a light plastic sleeve. You'll see there, it's a plastic sleeved hole. And soon after charging, about 2 hours after, it started to vent white smoke like this. This venting carried on from 2:30 in the afternoon. And you can see how hot it gets. We used the thermal camera. This is at 7 o'clock at night. It was still venting. And then the drone, obviously, the battery ran out, as we'll have it. And then as the drone went to change battery, the hole detonated. So we didn't capture it on film. This was just prior to detonation, and this is after the detonation took place. So you can see the next day we got to the bench, and there were 2 of these holes that had self-detonated, and all were measured at below 80 degrees. So the first thing we realized was taking a thermocouple and measuring hot holes is a problem in itself, because you're measuring the air temperature inside the hole and not the rock temperature. If you've got cracks like this, you can get serious hot spots. And so we tried to build our own infrared probe without success. And eventually I imported these units, very expensive, out of Australia. That box goes for about 185,000 Rand. Compared to the thermocouple unit you see lying next to it there, that's about 4,000 Rand. But when we started to use this, we immediately saw there were problems with our holes, and it was like we'd found the perfect P. So this is just the box, and it gives you the hole. It displays, it beeps, it alarms when you reach a certain temperature. It's really great. It takes 5 readings every second and records the hottest to the machine. So you can see this is going down a hole and back up the hole. And the hottest temperature on the one probe was 75 and 84 on the other one. So this is what we then moved over to. And you can see here, we introduced a thermocouple probe. So 2 teams, each with a thermocouple. The one team got 57, 58, the other one got 54, 56. But with the infrared probe, we got 178. That's actually from the box. 178 degrees, and that would set off the emulsion. Here was another one where we measured 90 degrees with a thermocouple, and it actually was 285 degrees when measured with the infrared. The infrared also has calibration. and you can calibrate it, you can set it. It's the same as the infrared that we used all the time during COVID, measuring our temperatures, except that this can measure all the way up to 350 degrees. So missing hotspots was the first cause of incidents in 2019, 2020. We still use a thermocouple because it goes down fast, simple and cheap. And we've destroyed one or two of our very expensive probes by putting them in holes over 300 degrees, and then the cables have melted. Where we see a 5-degree difference between the two, we just redo the exercise using the infrared. The next important thing we realized was to go above 80, we needed something to protect us from explosives falling into holes, and also a bit like a glove. And I came up with the idea of a PVC sleeve. It's very different from just plastic because it's got nylon and it can hold the weight. Here you can see we did hang tests. I first tested it using water for a couple of days, up to 157 degrees. And then we started to do a test on the bench, and we started to see that, wow, this is like putting your explosives inside a rubber glove, and it keeps it nice and cool, and you can, you can blast without the explosives ever falling into the underground workings. Here you can see hang tests which are conducted in the plant. This is a very long one, 13 meters, to test the strength. Inside the hole, the bag is bigger than the hole, and the friction holds the bag. It doesn't just hang on the eyelets at the top. It actually hangs on the friction of the side of the hole. We did cook tests. I made my own little stove with a gas stove, and I boiled water inside the sleeve. So you can see here, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning in our kitchen, at 300 degrees, I set the gas stove on the outside of the bag, and the water was 29 inside. And by 12:30, the water was boiling, 96 degrees in Witbank, and it was still 300 degrees on the outside. You can see the bag there. It was slightly damaged, but it was still holding the water. So essentially, this is what the bag does. We put it a meter from the bottom, so it doesn't hang on top of the, really, really hot. It's a 1 meter air gap at the bottom. We charge inside the sleeve, and we top prime every time. We also put a hot hole monitor in, and we've now moved to multi-probe hot hole monitors. Where we blast pillars, we also hang sleeves, and just above the boards, we'll hang the sleeve, and that basically keeps the explosives confined, and it keeps it nice and cool. A new addition, what we've done now is we're sewing the multi-probe units inside the PVC sleeve. So you can see it already comes sewn in. Every 5 meters, there's a probe, and that connects to the hot hole monitor. So you can see at every 5 meters what's going on inside of your bag. So the key thing here is the hot hole test that we conducted. Because we wanted to go beyond 80. We had lots and lots of holes. We were missing about 10 to 15% of our holes, and really affecting the productivity of the dragline and the shovels. So we wanted to blast, sorry, beg your pardon. And what we did is I started testing in February of 2022. And the first thing we did, and I'll show you this little video, is that we tested holes, and I probably did this the wrong way around. I started at charging holes of 300 degrees because I wanted to reenact the fatality that we had. So here you can see it's a 20-meter deep hole that had 𝗶𝗶𝗰 into the underground workings. It was venting, and we charged it, with the sleeve. We used 2 MMUs. Both holes were charged. And about 25 minutes after charging, the first hole detonated. And there you can see that is without a booster. That's a self-detonation of a hot hole, remembering that this was charged at 315 degrees. You see the white smoke, and that's very, very important to watch. And exactly as the guys in the fatality described it to the investigators, they were walking towards it. They saw the white smoke. They kept walking towards it. Then they saw a black and purple cloud, and the hole had exploded. And obviously with the rock, one person was struck and killed. The second hole here, you can see that slightly less aggressive, but what happened here, the bag fell into the underground working. So that was similar to the incident we had earlier in the year, where the bottom of the hole collapsed and it fell into the underground working. So that's essentially, and you can see again the white smoke. The white smoke gives you the warning, get off the bench, get away, trouble's coming. You'll see there that the craters are not massive by any account, but there's enough rock there that can, injure a blasting assistant and kill someone. So if we look here, this is the first hole, and you'll notice here that it was charged at over 300 degrees, the top line. It then, when it went in at just past 11 o'clock, everything is cool. And then the outside temperature climbs quite rapidly. It cools a bit and starts to climb rapidly again. The middle inside, and we didn't have a top probe, got much hotter. So in this hole, we know there was a hot spot. And that again was very similar to the fatality. The bottom remained cool until we get to the temperature when it crossed the point of 137 and we had a detonation. You can see it there. The internal temperature at the bottom was 117, at the middle 137, and outside 137. And soon after it went to 300 and then 700 degrees within, this is a half-second intervals. We've shown you the video of that, but you can see exactly as the guys described it, that black-purple smoke coming from. The second hole was 292 degrees when we started. And interesting here, when we charged it, that's the orange line for the sleeve. The outside went back quickly back up towards 300 degrees. But inside the sleeve, it remained very cool, well below 100. But then we had the detonation of the other hole. That's this big spike up to 600 degrees. So that sent a fireball through. And then it continued to heat up. And when it got to 420 degrees, the bag tore. And when the bag tore, explosives fell into the underground working and we had a detonation. I'm going to try and get through this very quickly. So these are just basically the photographs of that happening. I did another 10 tests, all different lengths, different holes, and also different depths, trying to see, what the explosive could actually handle. And I was working a lot around the 140 degrees because we'd seen something happening at about 137. This was a 7-hour test, and you can see in 7 hours, as you would expect, the heat is at the bottom. The bottom heated up. The middle, not so much, and the top stayed cool. After 7 hours, we detonated the hole. There was nothing happening on the hole. We detonated it, and that's what happens when you detonate a hole with a booster. You can see the difference of that. Big crater that it leaves, and that's just a single hole. Did another one of 300 degrees. We charged it. It was 177 outside the sleeve. Interesting here is that we started to see white smoke after about 2 hours, but the maximum temperature it got to was 132 at the top of the hole. It then cooled down again as the explosive heats and cools inside the sleeve. At about 3:30, we saw some white smoke again, and then it cooled down again, and then it was gone. We left it overnight, and sometime during the night, it self-detonated. But interesting was that we never crossed that 137 mark. You can see the hole there. You see there was a bit of smoke. That was when it was venting, but it didn't detonate. But the next morning we found that it had fired. It was a very small crater, but it had blasted by itself. In June, we did some more tests. Now I started to sleep over the holes. This is one after 8 hours at 240 degrees. It just ejected the bag, but it didn't detonate. You can see there that just threw the bag out, but there was no detonation of the hole, but it was a short hole. Strangely enough, somewhere there was a spike also in these underground workings of 450 for a short period, and that may have had something to do with that. This was the interesting one where we at 140 degrees, we slept it for 6 days. And day by day, you can see the top got slightly warmer, but after 6 days, the outside hole temperature was back at 139, but inside it was still at 100, which tells us that the sleeve did its job. So you can see day by day how the holes reacted. And then on the 6th day, we fired it and it was still good. We carried on doing tests. Then we put up cameras and we watched it with video cameras. Every time when there was a detonation, we saw this white smoke coming through first, and then you'd have the detonation. I'll just get to the, there's the next one that was also 7 days of sleeping. This hole, it is in the presentation, the details. Important here is just to say, what did we find? We started with 313 degrees and we got detonations, and obviously anything from 25 minutes up to 7 days that we had no detonations. But every time when there was an event, that we always got the white smoke, and that's the signal, get away from the bench. What we see here is just an ammonium nitrate graph, and it might help to explain something. At 132 degrees, there is a temperature spike and a weight loss. Not a weight loss, but a heat flow with ammonium nitrate on the prill. But, it obviously gets very pronounced when you get above 200 degrees. I'm not going to spend too much time on this. I really want to get to the conclusions. The biggest issue is the difference between thermocouples and infrared. You must use infrared technology if you're working with hot holes. When loading sleeves, okay, obviously the outside probe reads lower temperature as the hole is sealed by the sleeve. Heating is normally from the bottom up because the underground workings are on fire. But if there is a heat source near the top, say a 3-seam that's burning, that is real danger. And that's the thing that why we've got multi-probes now, multi-point probes. We see that there's a slumping of explosives at around 100 degrees, but we see rapid increase in temperatures when it gets to 137. And that's 137 at the top of the hole. That's when things start going awry. Understand that in all of these explosives gels have about 17 to 20% water. That protects the explosive, and while it's inside the sleeve, that water must first cook off before it can affect your explosives. We did a test blast. We've updated our matrix. We've got a blasting matrix. And again, this is a real blast on the bench. And here you can see there is a hole, this DO8. It was measured 205 degrees with the infrared and only 81 degrees with the thermocouple. That is the significance of having the infrared. If you don't have infrared, you are taking a big chance. What we've learned is we must make a knot in the sleeve to prevent the bottoms from falling out. And we've got new hot hole monitors now that show you the temperature at every 5 meters. These are the multi-point blast eyes. The unit's recovered, and it's just the cheap wires that we replace on every hole. We've had an incident more recently where, again, we were sleeving on the block, but we didn't sleeve all the holes. So here was a hole that was below 80 degrees. It wasn't sleeved, but the bottom fell out. And we should have known better. The block was much hotter. So now what we're doing is we are sleeving all holes where there's a hole temperature above 80. We sleeve all the holes on that bench.
This is how it's
So you can see there were 2 holes here that were venting. This is after the event. They cooked away.
Okay, Jeff, let's get
We
away from
went
it.
back.
Okay, that's cooking very, very bad.
We went back onto the bench and we fired that blast. So again, this gives us the reason not to stem hot holes, because you're not going to see the white smoke warning. Multi-point hot hole monitors, we use them inside sleeves above 80 degrees. And we have a spotter on our bench that looks for any white smoke and monitors for the alarms. So don't stem. And yeah, that's basically the main recommendation for that. Thank you. Sorry, I'm a few minutes over my time, Patty.
Thank you so much, Gerald. Thank you so much for that wonderful, insightful presentation. Do we have any questions for Gerald? Just from my side, Gerald, you say now that you guys are sleeving all the holes. Am I right?
We're now sleeving all the holes where we have a known temperature on that block above 80. So we treat every hole on its merits, but where we've got a block where there's holes above 80, we've made, and it's underground workings, not when it's virgin. When it's virgin, we know it can be just maybe some hot burning coal coming from the side. We've had incidents like that. But where there's the risk of the explosive breaking into the underground, because we've put foam bags in the bottom, we put gas bags in the bottom, but the roof often is so friable. As soon as you put 600 kilos of explosives into a hole, the bottom falls out and you have an incident. That's a big risk when you're charging above underground workings. That risk you take away by sleeving it. So then you won't have an incident if you are charging holes above 80.
And have you had incidences with the sleeves?
We've had no incidents. We've done over, as I said, when I did this presentation in the end of the year, it was 19,000. We've surpassed 20,000 sleeves used. We've had no incidents at all with them.
Okay, great. That's very interesting. Thank you so much for that share, Gerald. If there's nothing else for Gerald, I'm going to move on to Karabo. Okay, I think that's all for you. Thank you so much, Gerald, for that share. I think everyone has found it very interesting. Hot hole blasting, indeed. Very interesting. Thank you so much. We're going to move right along. Our next speaker is Karabo Mothapo. She's a digital transformation manager at 𝗑𝗂𝗃. She studied mining engineering at University of Pretoria and joined Anglo Thermal Coal at the time as a graduate and worked herself up the ranks in mining operations. She then obtained an honors degree in industrial and systems engineering, and also went on to get a master's degree from in MBA degree from University of Warwick in the UK. She's currently, as I said, a digital transformation manager, and her passion is to empower young women in STEM subjects. Karabo, welcome tonight, and we're really looking forward to hearing your share. Over to you. Should I share your presentation?
Yes, please, Pity.
Let me do that. There you go.
Thank you very much. I'll prompt you when to move to the next slide. Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As PT mentioned, my name is 𝗠𝗶H𝗶 𝗦 and I'm excited to be sharing with you insights into the digital transformation journey that the mining industry and the world at large is going through. When I first heard of the fourth industrial revolution, my mind was boggled. I remembered watching the movie Bicentennial Man with Robin Williams when I was a kid and wondering whether we have reached the time where we will live forever with this fourth industrial revolution. The term fascinated me as I had heard of reports of how this can improve mining operations, how tasks can be automated, and with a click of a button, you can get instant insights about your operations. At the time, I was a miner working in the underground coal mines, and I was hoping that the fourth industrial revolution will finally relieve me of having to carry around a step ladder when I had to change practices in the coal faces. Next. Next slide. So before I get into the change management aspect of it, I thought I would share some history with you about the industrial revolutions and how we find ourselves here today. So the mid-18th century is seen as the birth of the first industrial revolution. With agricultural demands growing, mechanization became necessary to meet the demands. The steam engine enabled mass production of that era as the imperialist growth throughout the world necessitated the demand to be met. The discovery of electricity saw more complex innovations of the time, such as the light bulb, the telegraph, the telephone, and the production of steel. And this took place in the 19th century and brought with it the second industrial revolution. The innovations of human beings and the drive to improve brought in the third revolution, seeing the creation of PLCs, computers, and partial automations in the mid-20th century. In shorter periods of time, rapid innovation, population growth, and globalization are seeing us exist in the fourth industrial revolution, where we're seeing advanced information technology, digital twins, and near autonomous technology taking over. And futurists are predicting that in the not so distant future, we'll be finding ourselves in the fifth industrial revolution, where everything will be personalized to each and every person's specifics, using data to do that. Next slide. With these rapid changes in technology, what is the impact on the mining industry and how is the industry reacting? The rapid change is forcing the industry to transform their technologies. Budgetary provisions and investments have enabled the likes of BHP to own the largest fleet of autonomous trucks, which saw it achieve a 20% increase in productivity and a 90% reduction in hauling accidents. Automation and robotics have taken various forms, bringing in automated drilling capabilities and robotics that can be used to enter dangerous areas to conduct inspections. To prepare for these advancements, it has become necessary for mining companies to upskill and reskill their employees to adapt to these changes. These changes have also introduced new career paths such as data scientists and developers who are now working in the mining industry and thus have increased the competition between industries to acquire these skills. Thus, mining companies are being compelled to rethink how the future of work will look like. To also keep up with these innovations, it has become imperative to collaborate with technology providers and OEMs to gain the benefits of the fourth industrial revolution, as mining companies need to focus on their core capabilities, which is mining, and allow the OEMs and technology producers to supplement and help them improve on the innovations in their operations. Next slide. It is estimated that by the year 2030, a total amount of $9.3 billion would have been spent on digital transformation projects. This is quite a substantial investment in this and shows the commitment of the industry to progress their technologies. Next slide. However, with this much investment, a McKinsey report released in 2018 indicated that 70% of these digital transformation projects are failing. 17% is a startling number and begs the question, why are these failures taking place? Next slide, please. So why is failure so common? Well, based on research and my own personal experience, I have highlighted these 4 areas, which I believe are major contributors towards the failure that is happening with digital transformation projects. The first one is not having a clear vision. Getting lost in the excitement can distract leaders from formulating a clear vision of what success looks like. Starting with the end in mind and knowing what a digitally transformed organization would look like is clear. However, leaders are not getting to this nitty-gritty. Often competing ideas also contribute to the blur of what this end vision looks like. The second point is poor culture adjustments. Digital transformations necessitate a different approach to doing work. And thus, when the culture of the organization does not support changes, people are rigid in their ways and are not accepting of the changes that are being brought into the organization, and there is no drive for learning or curiosity, projects face a lot of resistance and fail before they can launch. The third point is lack of long-term commitment. Digital transformation is not an overnight exercise that brings instant results. However, it is a long-term commitment that requires continued support. So lack of commitment manifests when project funding is withdrawn, key stakeholders leave the company or are moved to other areas of the business, or when turbulence hit the projects, then the projects are stopped and seen to have failed. Thus, long-term commitment is necessary to see the projects through, and this could take years for the organizations to realize their value. The last point to contribute is the lack of leadership support. Sorry, just go back. The lack of leadership support. Without leadership buy-in, it is difficult to drive digital transformation. When you find some members of the leadership team not supporting initiatives, by, for example, allowing team members to go and visit sites where similar projects are being done, or to allow people to go for training, when the leaders or managers are not allocating the necessary funding to support the operational activities as part of the digital transformation initiatives, and when management is not participating in change management activities, these drawbacks ultimately see the demise of the initiatives. Next slide. So how can we lay the ground for success? As you can see the picture on your right, digital transformation involves 3 elements: technology, processes, and people and culture. However, as you can see, people and culture encompass everything. You can have the right technology, have the best processes. However, if the people and culture of the organization are not aligned with these and are not supporting these, then that's where you find that failure. So it is important to prepare the people and the culture to ensure that your digital transformation initiatives succeed. The first thing to do is to conduct a culture assessment of the organization. This is where you send out surveys and ask people how they feel about the management team, how communication is being done within the organization, as well as how departments interact with each other. Because you can find that departments are working with silos, and thus information is not shared through, which can impact your projects. It is important to do a stakeholder assessment to understand who are the influencers, who are the skeptics, who are the supporters, who are the key decision makers. Once you understand the landscape of the stakeholders, then you can tailor your message to each and every kind of stakeholder so that the message that you send lands with them and that they see the end vision in mind. Once you have collected all this information from the culture assessment and the stakeholder assessment, then you prepare a change management plan. This change management plan will help you navigate through implementation of the projects as well as the sustainability of the projects. Prepare a change impact plan. With every initiative, there are going to be changes within the organization. Things like organizational structure, reporting lines, roles and responsibilities of people need to be reviewed and incorporated into the organizational redesign that will allow the sustainability of the initiatives. Next slide. Next slide. So what can sustain the initiatives of the organizations? Firstly, is ensure that you choose the correct service providers, aka partners, with whom you have a solid post-implementation support and you have proper response times for when things do fail, because technology does tend to do that. It fails. So you need the proper support of those service providers, and also their continued support in improving the delivery and the use of the technology that has been deployed. Secondly, is to select a champion or champions that will own the solution and drive continuous changes and improvements to the operations and also to the technology that has been installed. One example I can think of is this past presentation that Gerard shared, where he kept on doing experiments with the technologies to see what would be best fit to ensure that hole blasting is done safely. Thirdly, is to carry out post-implementation audits to drive continuous improvement of the solutions and adoptions. These audits will help you see where the gaps lie, as well as understand how you can improve. Then create a culture of learning, unlearning, and relearning. Curious people adapt better to change, and a company that drives people to seek learning is better geared for sustainable change. And lastly, to constantly manage expectations of all stakeholders. One thing I've seen is if stakeholders do not understand that this requires digital transformation initiatives require a long-term commitment, and they think that it will bring rapid change, then they get frustrated with the process and they frustrate the project and the implementation altogether. So managing expectations along the way allows continuous support and also long-term sustainability of the projects, and where finally the organization will see the value. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Karabo. I just want to see if we've got something in the chat. Just from my side, have you experienced a complete negative environment when it comes to technology implementation, where the technology is not accepted and the culture is completely against the technology, and how have you dealt with it?
Certainly, that happens almost every time. So I was responsible for a project where we were implementing a solution that allowed time and attendance management, where people needed to clock in, and they needed to clock in with either their fingerprints or their faces. So people were not happy that now they cannot defraud the system by claiming that they were at work when they were not. So there was a lot of resistance in terms of adopting that technology, where this was blue collar workers, instigated strikes on site and showed dissatisfaction with the implementation of this technology. So to manage this, we had to have various workshops with the people on site to explain to them why we are doing this and why this is important for the organization as well as for them. An important aspect that resonated with those people was the safety aspect, in terms of having valid roll calls, because what would happen is, if there are people who sign in for each other at work and there's a safety incident, it would be important to account for the people that were at site at that time. So pointing out that and showing them that having accurate data in terms of collecting their attendance at work also benefits them, in terms of ensuring that people are where they say they are, and if there are any safety incidents, then a proper and accurate roll call can be done to ensure that everybody has been taken out and are in a safe area.
Thank you so much, Karabo. There's a question in the chat from Ntako. She's asking, what have you done in your organization to ensure successful integration of new technology amongst various departments, and how was it received?
So one thing that I can say is important is to ensure that all stakeholders are involved from the get-go. If you are working in an organization that is used to working in silos, meaning that information is only restricted to the different departments and there's no cross-pollination of information between the different departments, it's important to identify this from the get-go and ensure that as you are implementing that project, you are breaking down those silos and improving communication between the departments. This, once you engage all the stakeholders, then you'll see where your project scopes start and begin, and who are the relevant stakeholders that are needed for those projects to be in place. And then once that has been achieved, then you have the full support of the implementation of whatever solution you're bringing in, and it speaks to all the departments and stakeholders, and it addresses all the pain points that they're experiencing that are going to be addressed by that technology that is being in place. So it is important to break down those silos, as well as involve the necessary and all stakeholders from the departments that are going to use that technology. I hope I answered your question, Nzako.
It seems that way. It seems that way.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Karabo. Does not look like we've got any other questions for now. We will still take questions at the end. Yeah, we'll still allow for questions in the chat and take some questions at the end. But thank you so much for your presentation, Karabo.
Thank you.
We can always chat at the end of the presentations. Okay, our next speaker, we've got 𝗠𝗶hi 𝗵𝗧𝗹𝗸, who is Group Head Innovation and New Technologies at 𝗵𝗫𝗄. So 𝗠𝗶hi is an electrical and electronics engineer with more than 16 years experience, mainly in the mining sector. He specializes in innovation and innovation strategies, technology development, as well as technology adaptation. He was recognized as an overall winner of the Mining Magazine Safety Award in 2017 for instrumental work in developing an active collision avoidance system for large mining haul trucks. He currently holds the position of Group Head, Innovation and New Technologies at 𝗵𝗫𝗄. He has a master's in electrical engineering from University of Northwest and is certified as an energy manager by the Association of Energy Engineers. Thank you so much, 𝗠𝗶hi, and over to you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to come and present on this inaugural initiative that Women in Mining has taken. I'm not going to bore you with just duplication on what has been alluded in terms of the spaces that I'm in. In addition, I'm looking at how do you advance mining as a whole, working through the Mineral Council and other bodies within mining in terms of driving mining forward. I think just to kick off my presentation, I think it is key to really understand why should mining innovate? I think a lot of people always find themselves wanting to adopt new ways of doing things, but on the basis of is the newest and latest thing, right? I think it's important to ensure that we've sustainability. So I've jotted out some few key points in terms of why must mining innovate, what drives innovation for us in the mining sector. So we've got a number of challenges that are, some of them currently material, others are going to be material in future. So mineral deposits are continuing becoming deeper and harder to access. I think that's something that everyone is very clear of. Declining productivity, the obvious inherent risk in the mining value chain, increasing operational costs, additional cost drivers are coming on board. And predominantly, some of those cost drivers are in good faith. So increasing ESG conscious consumers and investors are also going to put pressure into our business and how we do business and what we need to adopt to be sustainable. Challenging new operating environments, always continuous presenting challenges where we feel then the trial and tested that we've done before, we tend to stick with it. And the interesting one that's also emerging, quite interesting as we adopt new ways that was covered before by Karabo, is we're going to struggle to attract talent and skills, right, in this digital age. So we need to adapt to new ways of doing things in the mining sector, because that's going to be quite key for our survival, as well as to be able to continue to mine. So in a nutshell, the comment that's there is yesterday's mining techniques won't be enough to access tomorrow's deposits. And these deposits need to be accessed in a cost-effective way. So that's over and above the challenges that have been highlighted there. So I think it's quite important to just align the thinking around what we're talking about around innovation. I think you'll hear 3 different versions from multiple people in terms of what innovation is. So trying to really simplify it so that we are on the same mindset. So this is the difference between creativity and innovation, is that thinking about getting something done compared to actually getting it done. Innovation means turning ideas into solutions for complex business problems, which we face all the time. I think we've heard it from the speakers earlier on. And then what's very key around innovation, it is a process that requires research, testing, prototyping, and adapting. I think with mining companies, if we stick to reliance on OEMs coming up with solutions and not really participating and collaborating, is going to give us the short end of the stick. So innovation without quantification leads us nowhere. I think you tend to find exciting new technologies that you want to introduce, but if you cannot quantify what value does it deliver, right, it's going to be fundamentally challenging and flawed. But I think what sums it quite nicely is that innovation is it's a continuous process of how we do things better. And once you've executed something that you've deemed an improvement, is to really go back to that project or process or system that has been established, reviewing it, and then again, continuously improving what you've done even further. So that is the nutshell around innovation. And then very key to also highlight is what is technology. So technology comprises of infrastructure, devices, systems, software that generate, use, and carry information to enable transactions. I think what's important with this is really understanding that what we need to do is actually, first of all, we innovate before we introduce technology. So most of the things that we tend to battle with in the mining sector is some opportunities don't need extensive cost to do. And once you've really done as much as you can in the innovative, iterative process, then you employ technologies to either sustain or give you continuous improvement beyond that. So that's when you still and then get some additional costs. I think what's very important is to understand how our world is changing. So this is an extract from the King Code. So around the governance of entities, some of the things that we get measured on, not over just production, but there's things in there that investors and others look at. So this is just to frame it in terms of what technology and governance and security now coming to the fold, what that actually looks like. So I'm not going to dive into each one of them, but regulations are there to assist us to ensure that organizations are aware and take necessary steps to comply to relevant laws. We have compliance, which is for us to conform to those particular rules stipulated there. Obviously, in different jurisdictions that we are operating in, there are laws that actually govern us in that particular jurisdiction. There are standards that are available that provide us guidance and also assist us in developing appropriate long-term initiatives and technologies. But fundamentally, in the space of changing in technology, what is a limiting factor and enabler is policies. So we need these 5 key things to really assist us in terms of going forward within the innovation space and adopting technologies. Again, it's very key here. I'm just going to touch on the highlighted portions around this governance of technology information. So integrates technology and information with people and processes throughout the organization. We need to look at the risk involved. We need to monitor some intelligence, performance, and risks in terms of any third party. Investments into technology and information management. I think a colleague 𝗪𝗏 highlighted some of those challenges. And then all these need to be done in a responsible manner in terms of how you procure and dispose. Effectiveness of technology and information systems is required. But overall, across board, we need to maintain ethical and responsible use of these technologies. So again, how do we look at this and what does it mean for mining? So how do we support embracing innovation within mining? So we need to look at innovation as not something that complicates the mining environment. I think typically those who know some of the source systems and ways of doing work, I think we are comfortable because we know what we do and we do not necessarily need to change. So the first one is mining should be a place where we can practice implementing ideas in a way that changes lives. And the key point there is without the fear of failure. I think we know how commodity prices and how our environment is, and that's where we need to really shift our mindset into thinking differently. It needs to be a place where questions are at least as important as the answers that we're looking for. So the freedom of asking questions, because then you prompt the thinking from those in the know-how to think differently and approach differently, and it's a continuous process of openness. And I think some of our cultures that are currently exist, we're quite militant in our structures in mining. And I think these are the softer side of things that needs to change. Create an environment that calls on each one of us to constantly attempt new things in a structured manner in order to promote and fulfilling the value add work in our environment. An innovative mindset is key. And this is something that we can extract in terms of allowing us to be learning and to creating additional opportunities. And I think very key is that there's no better time than the now. It's something that we need to start acting now. We need to start looking at our processes, how our approval processes are, and how to adopt ways of doing things differently. What is very important across the mining value chain and all the actors in it is really to embed innovation as part of our DNA. What this allows us, it allows collaboration across mining companies. It allows us to be able to share openly in terms of both our threats and opportunities and how we resolve them. So innovation is quite key within our business to support strategy, embrace change, which is fundamentally key in our business, collaboration, enthusiasm, a culture, and competitive advantage. And what this means that across different commodity spaces, it allows us to collaborate, even if we're not in the same commodity space. So I'm just going to highlight the journey just to take you through the process. This is quite extensive, but I try to extract very key points in this. So looking at the journey with 5 key points, the main points are there: turning ideas into value proposition. I think what we tend to do is find something exciting, but without the ability to actually make it a value proposition that actually makes business sense and is not something that you only do for compliance. And then able, again, to making informed decisions, making a large number of small investments. So as much as we saw some of the iterative process in terms of doing things, we need to do that a lot more. So small fails are better than big bang investments and you ever fail. Then we look at it as something that didn't work. But the space of innovation will have successes and will have failures. But at the end of the day, you get to normality around your returns. And then the other one is really taking a journey, which I'll just highlight, which is you look at exploration and how do you exploit some of the things that you're getting. Then different skill sets and different expertise are required within the innovation space. So a lot of collaboration happens both internally and externally. So innovation cannot be a function or within an entity. It needs to also go out there. So those ideation phases where you actually open market innovation, all those things are quite key because you never know where the solution is going to come from. And again, innovators and inventors, we need to be partners. Very essential for the future of all our mining industries and the particular companies that we work for. Otherwise, innovation is unlikely to emerge as in a large scale. So you'll find little pockets of pet projects, but at the end of the day, they don't scale up because we didn't plan them as such. It's not part of the strategy, and we do not sustain them. So some of these kind of innovative journeys tend to happen when the commodity prices are favorable, yet where it actually thrives is when we're actually looking down the barrel. That's when we need to be innovative. So innovation cuts across when the commodity cycle looks like. So again here, just to highlight that the bottom left is where you're actually looking and searching where you need to exploit. So this is where you search for new ideas, where the value proposition is, where the business models are, and to ensure that the future of your company. That's the search portion. And the top right side is now you found certain opportunities. Now you're looking at how do you exploit them, and exploiting them means growth, right? And very key there on the axis, we need to look at returns. A number of times we do not do this within a mining cycle. We find suppliers that can solve a particular solution, but then we struggle to scale, whether it's pricing, whether it's use cases. But if it's not linked to core values such as safety, some of these innovations do not sustain themselves. So that's when you lead up to the death of some of those innovations. And then cognizance of time, again, so there's a number of risk factors that you look for. So within the explore phase, risk is high, where there's little evidence beyond the slides and spreadsheets that you put together and you sell to management, where you actually can show tangible value and execution of some of these initiatives. And then on the exploit side, this is where you look at what is a disruption of our core businesses. So if you look some of those things, some of the elements we're picking up from the markets around the ESG components, non-compliance on some of these things will make the product that you produce not being bought in the market. So it's not how you're mining it, it's encompassing everything, the social license to operate, the environmental conditions. So all these factors are becoming visible and innovating and applying the right technologies will actually de-risk us from that exposure. So the fundamental question that you tend to find and the stumbling blocks within our sector when you introduce something new, fundamentally the end user will ask these pertinent questions. does the innovation or technology that you're presenting address the problems and challenges that they have in their field of view, not your field of view, if you're looking at a holistic picture? Second one, does it improve what task I'm associated with in my day-to-day? And then does it add value to my roles and my activities? So when you look at it, it's quite internalized to a person. And the additional one there, which I don't like to highlight, is does it actually hinder or does it make me obsolete in what I do in my day-to-day role? I think that's quite key there, to really understand when you do something, it's not just for management, it's for the end user. And that's how you ensure sustainability. So interesting here, we looked at what are the trends that are out there, particularly looking at the mining side. So I'm going to touch on those trends that tend to really drive mining. So I'm not going to delve too much into the details. So quite obvious, transition to low carbon economy, not just from a security of supply, but really transition to low carbon economy. Another point, I think Gabo mentioned around the fleet of autonomous trucks or remote operating centers, another interesting trends that we need to look out for within our sector. Modernization of core technologies. So this is looking at really our core systems and how do we actually now modernize them and appropriate technologies that are adopted in that space. And interesting, as we continue to progress, we normally operate in remote areas and communities. There's going to be a need in terms of how do we bring them on board as we look at our revolution and adoption of new ways of doing. So there's an intersection point there that we need to look at in terms of what kind of skills we want to build in our host communities and how we want to leverage off that, because some of the core opportunities that exist today might not exist going forward. And then looking at our current workforce, again, we need to look at modern ways of doing things. Adopting technologies in terms of digitalization has got its merit, but it needs to have substantial value. I can decide to give everyone in the mining phase a tablet, but if you don't have a use case for them that is very sound, then there's no way you can have that as sustainable. It needs to be a useful tool. It needs to take all those questions that I've said of what is in it for me in terms of ensuring uptake and sustainability. And then again, another aspect which I'll just touch on is geopolitics in the mining sector. I think this is something that we see all over globally and locally, and it's something that we need to be cognizant of. And ultimately is the adoption of technology in the mining spaces. Key thing around this space is that some of the core systems that exist, which were technological at that time, have served their purpose and needs to be replaced. But the fundamental challenge is you cannot stop processes and production to upgrade them. So we need to find ways in terms of how do we ensure that we can uptake new ways of doing things without having impact. And then again, it's an opportunity to build redundancy so that that continuous improvement can happen during the process of production without impacting on production. So again, I think we've seen these key drivers, right? I think the main thing there is under the people, process, and technologies, that bullet in the middle. So around the processes, again, governance, frameworks, management processes, and how things are done. And then the technology, which is quite interesting that we need to look into, is user centricity. How is the user impacted and how do they uptake some of the technologies? And this is where it sustains, both from a culture and an end user perspective, from the people side, how that is going to look at. So when we do technology, it's not only looking at step changes and things that deliver significant value or that automate our process, but it must be user-centric. And then on the people side, very, very important, assigning ownership, communicating the importance of why the change is required and why we're doing it, both on a short term and a long term. And again, the culture that we need to develop. These key pillars, when you exploded them like this, are key actions that need to be taken to really make technology the next step forward. So I'm just going to dive into this again, questions on how you do things. So there's a tool used as called the technology readiness level. This is quite a useful tool. developed by NASA. But what it does, it classifies technology maturity. It gives us consistent to evaluate various technologies and how value is supplied and can be assisted, right? So what it does, there's nine levels within this, and I've grouped them just for ease of understanding. There's a TRL 1, 2, 3, TRL standing for technology readiness level. So there's the idea phase, then you get the prototype, then you get the validation, and at the end of the day, you get the final product. And basically, this is now on the granular level on each one of those in terms of how do they mature. But I'll cover this in detail in the following slides. So on the broader sense, the technology readiness level is something that's there to assist us as mining companies that we need to adopt. In terms of when you have a supplier coming to your doorstep, you need to be able to evaluate them in terms of how mature are they, what kind of assistance do they require, and how do you scale it for your own benefit and for you to also support them on their journey in terms of developing a product. So this image I've developed based on all the content that I've consumed, and what it actually provides us. It shows us in terms of how the maturity looks like from a technology readiness level maturity from an idea right through to a product. And then it shows you where innovators, academia, universities play in their space and all the various people that look at how technology is developed. And on the other spectrum, we're looking at other players where we also get involved, which is the industry, banks, CSR, and the rest that are available to really take technologies forward. So if a supplier comes to you at a very early stage, then you need to make a decision from your entity, organization, in terms of where do you want to enter. And that is driven by what does it deliver to your business? Is there potential returns to do it at an early stage? Or you rather wait to do it at a later stage where the returns are much smaller, but at the end of the day, you can get a product that actually delivers value for you. So what now for mining? I think mining companies, what we need to do as industry is really start to have an understanding where we can share, but at the end of the day, we have a clear definition of exactly what we want to do within the space for innovation and technology and how we want to adopt. Not just small step changes of the dealing with the problems at hand, but also having a view in terms of the future, in terms of how we need to do, how we need to get there, what we need to do now, and then how to actually work going forward. So this is a play-by-play level of showing how you actually take yourselves from not having anything or wherever you are and really building it up to a point where you have a strategy within your areas of expertise. And this needs to be very importantly aligned with the overall company strategy. If the work that you're doing in terms of innovation does not align with the overall company strategy, it's a pet project and it cannot scale and it cannot be adopted across operations. That's just being frank. And as a parting comment, innovation is essential for the mining industry to remain competitive, profitable, and socially responsible in the long term. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zandile. See, there's a question. Let's just quickly go to the chat. Or it's more of a comment. We've got a comment there from Raksha. The need to be agile and innovative in the current times is key for organizations. Thank you for a very interesting presentation, Zandile. Thank you. And then we've got a question from Garabo. How is your innovation department structured?
So at Implats, I've been with Implats now. I've been in mining and innovation and technology for many years. At Implats is the new function that I've occupied within the last year or so. So what we actually been doing on the ground is really ensuring, again, what is our strategic intent? Where's the organization want to go in terms of a corporate strategy? And we're busy developing a very forward-looking innovation and technology strategy with a very clear mandate that needs to be board approved. So it's a continuous work in progress, but this is an important hurdle that enables a plethora of opportunities and funding in terms of how we want to do things. But if it's a pet project dealing with small problems that you on an ongoing basis, then it will remain in that space. It won't be something with the visibility required.
Thank you, Mzondile. There's another question. How do you ensure that there is no silos within the organization where innovation is concerned?
Well, thanks for that question. I think what's very important, as I mentioned, innovation should not be one person or a department. It's something that cuts across. So a great example of that you find during COVID, the cleaners had a mechanism where there's a bucket and a solution of soap, and you use your feet to pedal and wash your hands. All these things are psychological. You need to build that kind of culture of solving problems and continuously doing it. So there is no necessarily a thing of there's a silo, because it's only competing for resources. But if you've got a strategic intent, I always call it your North Star. So we're saying we're going there. Whatever happens in the organization to get to that North Star is not something for you to govern, but it is for you to acknowledge all the changes, because you cannot manage innovation in a centralized fashion.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions. I think that wraps us up from your side. Thank you so much, Mzondile, for your presentation. It was very insightful. I'm gonna quickly look at the chat to see if there were questions that we might have missed previously. I see there was a question for Gerald Stencil. Gerald, if you are still online, I don't know if I missed this. However, have you had any challenges with reactive ground? That was a question for Gerald.
I did try and answer it, Patty. Basically, reactive ground, we've had one confirmed incident in 2010, and subsequently we haven't. That was a unique set of circumstances. We have found, we keep testing for it, but we find, beg your pardon, ground that's reactive with ammonium nitrate porous prill, which is the first test you do, pure ANFO. And then when you use the emulsion's got inhibitors in, and we haven't found any reactive ground when we use the emulsion. It was a red herring in 2019 when we had the fatality. The Australians came over, did the investigation because it was a third-party investigation, and they harped on about it must have been reactive, must have been reactive. We subsequently have found, we know now what the reason was. It was not reactive. There was burning four-seam coal left behind, covered with sand. We drilled through it. We had this burning four-seam at the top of the hole. We charged through that. We didn't know the temperature in the hole, and we got a self-detonation. It had nothing to do with reactive ground, because there were 6 holes around that hole, all the way around, 6 meters apart, and not one of them reacted. So if the ground had been reactive, you won't just have a single hole firing. I mean, an area becomes reactive, you know, at least on a 6x6 pattern. Otherwise, you're looking for a needle in a haystack, and it's not that small, reactive ground. Is there reactive areas? Yes, there is, but it's very mild in coal. All the circumstances have to come together. You need acid mine water, you need acid drainage, the hole needs to stand for a long time. You'll see sulfides on the surface, and yes, that's how you can have a reactive ground detonation. And if you sleep holes over in that circumstance, but no reactive ground so far.
All right. I think the question here was posted for either Mzondile or Karabo. The level of sophistication of our equipment and systems are often far exceeds the level of sophistication of our operators and supervisors. And that is why we struggle to introduce new technologies. Ignorance is bliss. How do we fix this?
Okay, I can take that question. I think I'll also be Karabo to respond to it. If you look at why we deemed equipment sophisticated, is because how we actually adopted them, or we did the feasibility, it was on the view of management, access to data, or whatever other value propositions are there. The end user, which I said user centricity is the key thing there, is that we didn't actually have a fully fledged view on that, right? And typically some of the complexities are through, funny enough, the innovative process. So you do one thing, you realize, oh, you're gonna do this, then you keep plugging all these various systems, and then now you've got this monstrosity. Yet if you had to take a fresh view of it, you can come up with something simple. So it's just, again, to really step back and look at how do we simplify it and how do we put user in the center of it.
To add to that, I mentioned in the presentation that we need to foster a culture of learning, unlearning, and relearning. So when it comes to implementing initiatives, it should not be that people get to learn and be trained on that initiative. It should be that the company encourages people to go and further their studies, for example, or go to conferences or do mind visits to other operations, things like that, where people cultivate that curiosity within themselves. And that eliminates the ignorance, where when something comes to them for the first time, then it's like, oh, I didn't know about this, and they don't have that interest as well. So I think that should also, it should not be limited to people who work in offices, but also to people who are in the face, for them to also have that opportunity to do external visits to other operations, to go to conferences and things like that. So that's how I would suggest that ignorance be tackled.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Karabo. I think that wraps up our session for this evening. Thank you so much to our speakers. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and as well as our participants. Thank you for sharing your questions, and as well as attending the session tonight. It's been a really great evening of learning, and I've also learned quite a lot myself. That concludes our evening tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good evening.